Welcome and thanks for tuning in to the Victorian Aboriginal News Van Talks podcast. I'm your host, Charles Pakana.
Victorian Aboriginal News acknowledges and pays respect to all traditional owners and custodians across Australia. We acknowledge the elders who have gone before, those who currently lead their communities, and those who will follow in the years and generations to come.
Today on the program, I'm fortunate enough to be at Fire Rescue Victoria Fire Station 63 in Geelong and meeting with a couple of professional firefighters, Yorta Yorta man Aaron Felmingham and Utnamukta and Narunga man Brett Goods. Aaron and Brett, thanks for joining me on the program today.
It's our pleasure.
Yep. Really great to have you here. Aaron, I just want to kick it off with you because your role is really in firefighting recruitment or FRV recruitment. Just give us a bit of a thumbnail dipped in tar sketch of what your role is.
Yeah, so my role got created on the back of some success that FRV saw in the women recruitment space. They put some support people around that process just to guide people through our recruitment stages and how complex and really be a detailed, you've got to read everything, get into the nitty-gritty of what each stage holds. And so just to provide better information on each stage of recruitment, they stood up those roles to increase the women in firefighting.
So women and mob in firefighting?
Yeah, so now they've created my position on the back of that. And the idea is to meet the same stuff and guide mob that want to become firefighters through the process, inform them what each stage of the recruitment process has in it and how to best get to the next stage.
How long has that role been in place for? And we'll come through to some of the particular requirements or changes involved in that recruitment process in a little bit of a while. But when did this role actually start up?
June last year.
Right, so very new.
Yeah, June 25. Yeah, we've done a lot of work in the years leading up to that to get it stood up. And now it's pretty well supported. It's starting to flow on and see some results and get some good recruitment supports in place.
And Brett, now I first met you when you were at Craigieburn going through your training about what we talked about 4 years ago now.
Just on, yep.
You're an ex-footballer, you've been in the corporate world, and now you're out there, Fire Rescue Victoria. I'm really keen to know, and I know the listeners will be as well, what prompted the change from football to corporate to firefighting?
My brother Jake was Parks Victoria, still is. He's been there for a long time. So
right.
He's 2 years older than me, so he's always fought bushfires and been involved in that. He's now air base manager and works out of the Grampians. So when I was a young man trying to work out what I wanted to do in life, football was obviously priority, but that didn't work out for me. So I studied conservation land management and got into the Department of Sustainability Environment it was back then. So I was engaged as wildlife officer, worked in bushfire management, amongst other things. So I always had a bit of an interest in it. Football and life took me elsewhere. And like you mentioned, I was in the corporate world most recently, and me and my wife were discussing, starting a family, and I've always had some friends in the job. And rewind back to when I was 18 playing North Ballarat Rebels, a guy by the name of Neville Collins was in the CFA as a professional firefighter supporting us in the football program. And I got talking to him one day, and so from that point for the last 20 years, he's just always prompted me, Goodsy, when are you going to come join the fire service? So it wasn't until I finished playing footy and I was in the corporate world and another friend actually that I went to school with joined, and he's a carpenter by trade, and I got chatting with him and I was like, you know what have I got to lose? I'll have a crack. I was living in Adelaide at the time.
Yeah. And
went through the process, and like Aaron mentioned earlier, it's quite stringent and you've got to prepare and you've got to know people in the job to succeed in that. So yeah, I had a crack. I got in. Yeah, made the decision to leave the corporate world and join the fire service. Mainly, again, I said, my understanding is that the work-life balance was going to be much better for me and my family. And, 4 years in, I haven't looked back, and I'll continue to do the rest of my time as a career firefighter, which is 30 years, but I don't think I'll get that far because I'm too old.
Oh, you can't leave that question or that statement open. How old are you?
I am 42 this month. Yeah, so my 30 years, I plan on being retired well before then. So,
well, Uncle Owen Butler only retired recently. He's, 74? So the option is there, brother.
The option is there. I do plan on doing other things. And again, it's the great thing about the job, you can.
And I really want to come back to you in a few minutes and talk a bit about the importance of mentoring, Aboriginal mentoring within Fire Rescue Victoria. I know you're very keen. We spoke previously about promoting it within community. You mentioned when you were younger that you'd go to carnivals and you'd see the Army, the Air Force, CFA and other services, but never the FRV. It was never presented as an option for the mob. We will come back to you and talk about the importance of mentoring. So let's just bear that one in mind. Aaron, I want to come back to you. Your history in firefighting. You've been in a bit longer than 4 years. I think, what, 15 years or so? Is that right, brother?
13 years.
13 years. Close enough to 15.
Yeah.
Okay. What made you decide to join the FRV?
To put it in the shortest version I can, I was in the Navy and we were part of operations for border protection.
Yep.
And you didn't always see the best of human nature and that welcoming aspect or really being there to help people. And then after the Blak Saturday fires, I'd done some reading into some of the experiences people had had at the time and figured that was kind of an area I wanted to look at and do. So it was really born from wanting to help people a bit more, given I'd been on the other side of the fence where it wasn't all about that.
I'm interested to hear your reflections on, as an Aboriginal man, as I mentioned, a Yorta fella, what was the environment like to come into the FRV as an Aboriginal man?
It was very challenging, to
The
be
smile.
honest.
I wish
Yeah.
the audience could see the smile. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Challenging in what ways, brother?
Well, there wasn't a lot of that journey that you see in the whole of society, you know, where people were getting more educated, people were knowing more, but that wasn't there when I came through the doors, which was CFA at the time. And we used to have to go to Fistfield for our training, which was different to Craigieburn. It was a stay on site course, and it went for 3 months. So you got to know people a lot better, but there were certainly some experiences I had when we're on the road or people had a few beers after, you know, day's training that they'd say insensitive comments and things like that.
And we
So-
can imagine what they are. There's no need to go over those, of course. Yeah.
So it wasn't great at the time, but once I came out and identified and said, this is me, you guys need to adjust what's going on.
Yeah.
And then kind of made that statement in a way I probably shouldn't have at the time, given I had a belly full of anger, people started to adjust and ask more questions and become more informed about who I was and where I was from and, you know, the life I'd had. And, you know, a lot of those people have changed their views across my career. We run into each other all the time, whether it's at a factory fire or on the side. And, you catch up and, those attitudes have definitely changed.
So I assume for you, Brett, that it would be significantly different because, first of all, can't hide the fact that you're an Aboriginal man. You've got that Goods name, which is known right across the country. You're a well-known man across Victoria as it is through your own work in football and other areas. How was it for you those 4 years ago? Do you think there was a lot more acceptance or did you still come across some, let's be blunt, some crap and corruption?
Being a bit older as well, I was 38 when I applied.
Yeah.
You know, you stand up and you speak pretty loudly for yourself in the moment. And having, you know, obviously the world knows what the brother went through. And so, I didn't really come across it. It's funny, actually. The only time I did, a comment came from an actual one of our trainers on the course. And it was tongue-in-cheek. And we had a word afterwards and he was very apologetic. And that's all it needed to be. But he was well aware. I made him well aware of his comments and others heard it too. So, yeah, he was apologetic at the moment. But again, it's just things were very different 10 years ago when Aaron would have went through. And, yeah, for me, it was a really positive experience. Enjoyed it. And, and that's while we're here, I guess, we want to encourage others to go through the same process.
I hope an element of that was, too, that we came out to recruits and actually caught up with you and introduced ourselves and said, we're here to support you. I know it's at the end of your course, but hopefully that also let you know that you weren't alone.
Yeah, and I can imagine it'd be very different for a younger Aboriginal man or woman that's going through that doesn't have the confidence to speak up in something like that. But again, hence why we're doing a lot of work, and Aaron has his position full-time now with FRV to create some of this change within the organisation that, to be quite frank, other organisations are well and truly 10 years into their journey when it comes to reconciliation and providing that culturally safe environment for its employees.
So, Aaron, just Heading to the First Nations pathway, which is an employment program that you've been responsible for spearheading within FRV, obviously it wasn't just smooth sailing for you and hasn't been smooth sailing. And once again, the smile is telling a million stories right now. Let's at least get one or two of them. What have been some of the key challenges that you've faced in getting this program up and going to the point where it is now? Because I would assume it's nowhere near completion.
This journey started in 2018 and it's only really got some good traction probably over the last 24 months.
Yeah.
But some of the things to start with were just, it was more around making our hierarchy know that this is an issue, that, you know, we have cultural safety issues, that we have recruitment issues, and getting them to listen to start with, and then getting people to champion the progress.
Yeah.
Since we've become FRV, that they've had people in departments committed to this stuff and working on it and progressing it until my position started, and now I get to, which is great. But yeah, that was probably one of the biggest issues, was making it known that blackfellas are applying and we want to become firefighters and we're falling out at different stages. One of the biggest barriers we've seen is around our written selection test, which is some kind of verbal, mathematical, mechanical reasoning test that you do right at the start. The biggest thing is it costs about what used to cost $180. It's now $238, which we were helped to subsidise.
So it actually used to cost money, or does cost money, to sit for the exam to become a firefighter.
Yeah, correct.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I was never aware of that.
Yeah, and so we've set up some structures to be able to subsidise that, but also the study material, which is awesome. That's our biggest barrier at the moment. We have about 60 to 80 mob out there apply every year, and we lose about 80% of them out of that. So it's a huge loss, and then that kind of is then reflected in each stage after that with the natural attrition rates. So that's a big area we want to improve. And
have there been other specific areas that you've identified since taking on this role and starting up the program that may have been particularly challenging for mob and represented by over attrition?
Yeah, I'd say every stage where we're overrepresented by, kind of 5 to 10% in each stage. A lot of it's de-identified, so I can see it more as upskilling people and giving them the inside knowledge as to what to expect in those processes. Like Brett mentioned earlier, one of the key aspects to finding out what happens at each stage is knowing a firefighter that's been through it.
Yeah.
And so that's part of what my role is, and, what people will lean on Goodsy for in the future is to understand that a bit better.
As a firefighter, been in for 4 years, Brett, do you find yourself being requested to act as a mentor for younger Aboriginal people, whether they're in or about to sort of express interest in joining FRV?
He mentors me.
Well, the great thing is about a job, like a lot of the people do apply and get through, they've had previous careers.
Yeah.
And being fortunate enough to have worked in corporate world and get it and know it, and FRV is one of those things when you look at the business admin of our structure. And I think anyone in the job that has got in the job has had help, support to get in, and they are willing to pay it forward. So whether it's myself or Joe Blow, who works down the road at Station 62, he'd be willing to help a young person, if they're interested in getting the job, to work through the processes and steps. So if there's someone in Geelong and it's an Aboriginal boy or girl, more than happy to support them, whoever it might be, even if it's not an Indigenous boy or girl. You'll pay it forward, like the recruiters before me and the ones that will come after me. So to answer your question, the requests only come through where I feel like I have more knowledge and awareness, and that comes probably more into the processes within FRV and being able to navigate certain areas. And I know Aaron's been in the job for a long time and he's much better at some of that with me, particularly around the union stuff that, it's probably not even worthwhile putting into this podcast, but it's just good to be aware of that there are some different ways in which we operate as an organisation because of that. So it just means it just takes a bit more time.
Sure.
Definitely love going out to community events. That's something that I'll always continue to do, because I remember when I was a young man, I loved meeting new people, particularly that have had other life experiences not very different to mine, and footy carnivals and netball carnivals is probably one of the biggest gathering events.
Absolutely.
For our cultural experience here in Victoria. So that's a no-brainer to make sure we have a presence at, particularly for our Indigenous employees, both operational and that work in the administrative part of our organisation, because there are more opportunities than just becoming a firefighter. There are other opportunities in our admin areas as well.
Let me ask you a question that may be a little bit uncomfortable, but it needs to be asked because you've mentioned, Brett, that you go out to these events and you like going out to the community events, and Aaron, I know that that's part of your gig. But do you ever feel that there is a danger of being held up as essentially, look, here are our token Aboriginal fellas, and used as lures to bring black fellas in to the fire service? Because that in itself sort of really touches on cultural sort of unsafety, doesn't it? Do you see that risk ever existing?
Yeah, absolutely it can. Especially
nice pauses there, gents.
In the early days, I labelled it black cladding in reference to cladding on buildings, and it all looks good on the outside, but it's got a risk to it. Obviously, I like to think that it's now become a two-way street where it wasn't just we need you to rock up and do this photo shoot and be part of our promotional material. I hope that we're opening doors for blackfellas in the job to come to stuff like fire ops, which you don't know. Or we're running an immersion program later in the month for the Fitzroy Stars. It's about bringing blackfellas along to that, be engaged and build their own kind of awareness around the leadership and see others interact and see how those internal mechanisms work with the union and the decision makers and stuff like that. So then they're building their knowledge of the organisation to then build other careers, not just in firefighting, but it might be in other stuff like community safety or the logistics that FRV needs, or it might be in IC roles. It could be in anything, and just seeing that those opportunities are there for them, making those connections, and if they want, I can connect them back with those people they've spoken to have chats about career opportunities and development opportunities.
Because as Brett mentioned before we started the interview, it's much more than just jumping down into your kit and getting onto an appliance and out to a fire. There's a hell of a lot more than that. What is it that keeps you in the job, Aaron? And then Brett will come to you with the same thing.
This position, for starters, it's something I've been working towards for a long time, and I'm really passionate about it because, it really forms the core of my why to help people. Specifically my mother didn't have these opportunities, and I want to open those doors for other people. So that's why I'm doing this. But as far as the firefighting role goes, I think it's probably jobs come and go. Sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's quiet. It's the people you work with a lot of the time, and that's a factor I really enjoy. Sitting around, chewing the fat, talking about footy or other things, how good Goodsy's career was, whatever it might be. So, yeah, that's the things I love about it. And then, you get to go help someone on their worst day.
Yeah. Brett, what about you, brother?
Yeah, no, definitely some of the same things that Aaron's mentioned. I'll always say this, that being a professional athlete playing in the AFL has been the best job ever. And this is a very close second from all the other jobs that I've had, mainly because of and Aaron mentioned it, you're sitting around the table and you're with your colleagues who you work with every day. Here at 63, we have 12 on shift and 4 trucks. So it's a lot of people. And we have a lot of fun and a lot of banter and do big cook-ups for lunch. But, when it's serious, it's serious. And, we go out and we train for different elements of the jobs that we need to do. And that's to prepare us, similar to when you played football. You're training, you want to make everything second nature, so it comes subconscious. And so when you're under pressure in that environment, whether it's kicking a footy on the MCG or you're the pump operator at a house fire, and people are relying on you to do your job. So you perform your job well, the result is what the result is, but you just know you've done your job and you played your role in that. And then you get back to station and you debrief and great job everyone, and it's just a great feeling. You are helping community, you're supporting people in their worst day ever, and again, I mentioned earlier, the work-life balance is second to none, really.
You're passionate about that.
So I will, and I'll say that more on this station because I know that for our mob, that's important. Work's not everything, and we see that, and we know that, and in this job, you feel like that's certainly when you are here, you are present, but when you are home, there is no emails, there are no phone calls. You can completely shut off and you can spend time with your family and at home and whatever that looks like, you can do that.
Before we get on to the last question, I'm really keen to explore just briefly the influence that caring for country plans are having on work being undertaken by FRV. Now, most notably here in Naarm, in Melbourne, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung released its Caring for Country plan just a couple of months ago, and contained within that and with other traditional owner groups across the state is Caring for Country plans really have a bit of a focus on cultural burning and getting TOs to be involved in cultural burning. Do you both see that there is an important future for closer relationships between FRV and the individual stations themselves and the traditional owner groups in these sorts of activities? Aaron, I'll start with you, brother.
Yes, absolutely. My personal opinion is I see it as extremely important.
Yeah.
There's a big picture thing happening in the background at the moment with FRV, and we're looking at how we can get out of the way to let other agencies who have better connections with traditional owners to come into our spaces and do that. You know, like we're looking at our agreements with DECA, CFA around vegetation management.
Yeah.
And how we can expand that to include cultural fire and how that can happen in our spaces. As it stands right now, I know all the TOs are under-resourced. There's a lot of pressure on them around, you know, the reforms that are coming, and that's only going to get worse, right?
Yeah.
So why not just have the one point of contact who has all the resources that can then reach out to us and make that stuff happen, and we can provide whatever elements traditional owners need, whether it's, you know, fire protection on the day, getting mob from FRV to come out and just say g'day and, you know, you sit and have a yarn and talk about the fire and why they're here and what that country means to them. And, yeah, there's a whole kind of bunch of stuff we'd love to learn from them as well.
So it's a changing landscape.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Brett, any thoughts on that, brother?
Well, obviously there's the responsibility part of it, and that's like the fire management area that's obviously relevant to us as FRV and other organisations. But then there's the other part is, like FRV, we're on our own journey at the moment when it comes to like our Reconciliation Action Plan and getting Aaron in his role so we can progress some things like employment opportunities and, you know, that cultural safety stuff. And for me, the educational part is the biggest part, is that what we can provide to our employees through our apps and other frameworks and policies and procedures. That for me is the foundation, so that when we're asking a station out at Wangaratta to engage with its traditional owner group, they have an understanding as to why, and a better understanding of why there is the need for supporting our Aboriginal people in the community, you know, the equality and the equity that's required and needed that we didn't get in school, right? So that has always been the greatest thing about RAPS, in my opinion, is the education that it provides to its employees. And we're on that journey, and no doubt as we roll that out and we get more employees operationally and in our admin area, you know, mobbing the job, we'll just see better outcomes on the back of things like that.
Last question. Bit of a tongue-in-cheek one, having just finished watching Station 19 and binged watching that. How accurate do you believe that television depicts firefighters' lives? I'm going to start with you, Brett, because you smiled more broadly.
Well, there's a couple of things why, but I can only imagine because I haven't watched it myself. So
you haven't missed a lot.
I'm only going to, from what I've watched, you know, like Ladder 47, those older movies, you know, from the 90s and 2000s, like that's obviously Americanized stuff, and they fight fires very different to us. So I don't know. I'm not sure if there's anything as accurate as on TV at the moment. Aaron might know more.
Aaron, your thoughts?
Wasn't there a Killer Bees episode?
Oh, there was.
Yeah.
There was, yes.
Never happens.
On that note, gents, Brett Goods, Aaron Felmingham from the FRV, thanks so much indeed, fellas. Really appreciated the yarn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For a full transcript of this interview, visit the Victorian Aboriginal News website at vicaboriginalnews.com.au. Until our next episode, stay safe and stay informed.